Greetings, fellow Obsidians of the vast Obsidian community. Welcome to another video in the Obsidian for Noobs video series, featuring tutorials, tips, and tools for new users of the Obsidian personal knowledge management software. I'm introducing a new type of video as part of this YouTube channel today. I'm calling these videos Quick Tips. They're short videos that cover only one activity or feature of Obsidian, just a small piece of helpful information or a useful tip. I'll mix these quick tip videos in among the longer tutorial type videos that I usually make. Today's quick tip involves how to create a note that floats over your vault and always remains on top, or in other words, a floating note that always remains in the foreground. This technique can be very helpful if you have information that you want available and visible while you're working in your vault. Perhaps some content you need to refer to frequently, or maybe a guide or set of directions you need to keep handy for reference. It's a simple three-step process after an initial setup. The setup for this trick involves setting two hotkeys. One for the command Open Current Tab in New Window, and I set the Alt and T keys as my hotkey combo. And the second one is for the command Toggle Window Always on Top, for which I set Alt and W. Naturally, you can use any key combination that suits your needs. Once you set up the hotkeys, the process is as follows. First, open the note that you want to have floating. Second, press the hotkey combo you set to open that note in a new window. That will create the floating note. And finally, press the hotkey combo you set to make this note stay always on top. I'll demonstrate it now in a vault. Okay, I'm in my vault. I've got some lorem ipsum text here. We'll make believe this is a document I'm working on in an Obsidian project. And I'm going to open another note, which is a list of the hotkeys that I use. I can never remember my hotkeys, so I like to keep them readily available. And this floating note is a great way to do that. So step one, as we saw, is open the note that you want to float. That's this note. Now I'm going to press the hotkey combo to make this note open in a new window. Well, before I do, let's talk a little bit about hotkeys. I'm going into Obsidian settings, and I'm selecting hotkeys here. And I'll show you where I set these. So the first one was to open a note in a new window. So I'll search for open. And here it is down here, Open Current Tab in New Window. And as you can see, I set the Alt and T keys as my hotkey combo for this command. To set a hotkey combo for a command, click on the plus sign associated with that command, and then press the keys that you want as your hotkey combo. If the result turns up red, that means you've pressed a key combo that's already in use, and you should select a different combination of keys. So I did Alt and T for Open Current Tab in New Window, and for the other one, which was to have the window always on top, Toggle Window Always on Top, I set Alt and W. Okay, so back to this note. I'm going to do Alt and T to open this in its own window. And you can see now this note, this hotkeys list, is now created in its own separate window. And I'm going to resize this window because we want these floating windows to not be obtrusive. We want them readily available, but not in the way. Now I can still scroll through this note, so I can access all of its content, even though I've reduced its size. All right, as it stands now, it is in its own floating window, but it's not always on top. If I click into this note, back into my vault, you can see that it disappears. I can call it back up. It just shrunk down. But every time I do something, I'll lose it. If I go back to my lorem ipsum text, which we made believe was a note I'm working on, I don't have that available. So what I want to do is make this always on top. That's where the second key combo comes into play. I'm going to now press Alt and W on my keyboard, and that will make this note stay always on top. So now if I go in my vault and I start working on things, that note stays here. It's readily available and visible. Right, no matter what I do in my vault, this stays on top. So that's the process. Open the note that you want to make floating in your vault. Press your hotkey combo to open it in its own window. Reduce the size on that window if you want to. and then press the other hotkey combo to make the note always stay on top. Let me do it with another example. I'll get rid of the hotkeys list. And now I'm going to open a note in which I made a table for Markdown. So I can easily refer to this in case it's a particular Markdown code that I don't remember. And I want to make this a floating note. This is another thing that would be handy to have readily available so I can refer to it when I need to utilize some Markdown. Okay, so first, Alt and T to open it in its own window. There we go. We've got it in a separate window. I'm going to reduce the size of this to the table. Now again, it's in its own floating window, but it's not going to stay always on top. If I start working in the vault, it shrinks down. So I kick in my second key combo, which was Alt and W, to make this always on top. And now it's always on top. It's available. So I can tuck it out of the way here, even more if I want to. I can work on my vault. And if I need to remind myself of a particular Markdown code, I can just refer to my little table here. I actually use this technique for a listing of my hotkeys because I can never remember them. So I really make use of this little trick. And this floating note trick would be great for some other possibilities as well, just for a few examples, as a measurement conversion chart when working with recipes, or for important formulas for math or science, for grammar rules when you're writing, for links to websites that you might need to use while you're working on a project, or even for links to internal vault notes that you might need to reference or open. Let's do it with links now. I'll close this. I'll close the Markdown table. And I have a note here that I called links to notes. And I'm going to create two links in this note. The first link will be to my hotkeys list. And the second link will be to my Markdown table. And I'm going to turn this into a floating note now. So Alt and T to open it in its own window, and I'll resize it, make it more manageable and less obtrusive. And then I'll press Alt and W to make it always on top. Let's go back to the lorem ipsum text. So if I'm working now, and I need either to reference my hotkeys list or my Markdown table, I can click the link and it will open in this little window, this little floating window. I can reference it. If I click the back arrow, I'll go back to my list of links. If I need Markdown, I can go in there. And better yet, I don't even have to activate the links. If I hold the control key down and hover my mouse pointer over the link, it will open in its own little window here. And I can access it and check it out. And I can access it and scroll through it. Same thing with the Markdown. I hold the control key down, I hover over it, and it opens in its own little window. So by putting links in a note, you can create a floating window that has access to a lot of other notes in your vault if you think you might need to refer to all of them. And as I mentioned before, we can also put links to websites here as well. So I might put a link to an AI LLM that I might want to use, or to Google, or anything else on the internet, Obsidian Help, for example, and have that readily available. So there you have it, how to create a floating note that always remains on top. A handy trick for keeping needed information readily visible and accessible while you're working on a project. A simple three-step process. Open the note you want to have floating. Press your hotkey combo to make that note open in a new window. Press the other hotkey combo to make that note always be on top. 1, 2, 3. Okay, fellow Obsidizens, that's all I have for now. I'll see you in the next video. Happy note-taking.